Welcome to the Marta Hobbs podcast, a sacred space of reclamation, unraveling, and in the age where loneliness and isolation are at an all-time high, also a place of deep connection to each other as well as to ourselves. As I share the intimate journey of my own life, I hope to reflect your own so that you can live more deeply and freely from a place of full alignment and authenticity. Because that is what we're here to do, to continually discover ourselves in order to fully express our sacredness, wholeness, and radiance as women. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to the Marta Hobbs podcast. Thank you for being here. Today, I really wanted to start a conversation with you about something that I've really been thinking about, contemplating, exploring, and living into in my own personal life recently. And that is the whole idea of being a whole woman. I feel like for the majority of my life, I have fragmented, split myself off into pieces, divided myself into sections that were acceptable, unacceptable, put on masks, set different roles that I play for different people, perform jobs. There were so many times that I would filter parts of who I was, try to shape and mold into something that will be lovable and acceptable. And in such a way, I've almost subdivided myself into parts that are okay and parts that are not okay. And the whole thing, now that I'm 50 and have really explored the terrain of all of it, the whole thing is extremely disempowering. And as I sit here reflecting on how inconvenient a woman fully embodied, fully integrated, fully in her power is to the world, it is pretty apparent and obvious to me that that is really the solution or the way to go or the way to heal or the way to claim our power back. And that is to accept every little bit of who we are, integrate it, and love it back into wholeness. You know, as we're little girls, I don't know about you, but this certainly was my story. We are born whole and complete, fully sacred and perfect. And then the world teaches us that there are parts of us that are unacceptable, not lovable, perhaps even broken. And we learn this pretty early on when we're children. When our parents tell us, don't do that, or do this, be this way, be a good girl, we get punished. Then that is compounded even more so when we go to school and we're told there's a right and a wrong way to behave. And then our friends are pretty quick to point out which part of us they prefer and which part of us they don't when we get made fun of, or we don't get picked for things, or we get picked for other things. And so I feel like as little girls, the world is constantly telling us how to be. And none of it is to be fully who we are. We learn pretty quickly on to repress and filter the truth of who we are for the sake of love and belonging, or the illusion of love and belonging, right? But we learn pretty early on that there are good and bad parts of who we are. And so we take on that formula and we begin to fragment within and disconnect from certain pieces of who we are, completely fragmenting and losing the power of what it means to be whole and integrated. And then we follow these paths in life, right? You become a student. Maybe you become a career woman. Maybe you become a mother. Maybe you become an entrepreneur. You pursue a certain path of who you are or the role that you play. And maybe the world tells us that we're more acceptable when we are not too loud, when we are not too much, when we're not too sensitive, when we're not too emotional, when we're not too expressive, when we're not too angry. Again, reinforcing that there is a right and a wrong way to be. A big part of my journey as a woman was growing up in an environment which told me it was preferred and validated and accepted when I was strong, when I was a warrior, when I was a fighter, when I was tough, when I succeeded, when I pushed through, when I made things happen. That was applauded, not just by my family, but also by society. People love to hear the story of a successful entrepreneur, of the immigrant woman who overcame, who learned the language, mastered the culture, achieved her dream job working at a TV station in her 20s, and then went on to build this beautiful, big business that grew quite large. It made people feel good. That was a good story. What made people uncomfortable were the parts where I struggled, were the parts where I was overwhelmed, were the parts where I was softer and I needed help and maybe I didn't have all the answers. But I learned really quickly that when I came that way, when I came feeling, when I came sensing, when I came connected to intuition that made no sense logically, when I came wanting to have a conversation about something uncomfortable, wanting to collaborate instead of compete, people didn't know what to do with me. My world as an entrepreneur was filled with men. I was surrounded by the masculine energy. And what success looked like to me in my circles, in the world that I was around, was the kind of success that was modeled for me by men. And that was more of that directness, toughness, pushing through, having a plan, having a goal, going after it, going to get it, doing it yourself. It was very masculine in its nature. And I got very comfortable functioning from that space. And the world received and applauded it. I did quite well. People said, "You're amazing, great job." And so I took that on as part of my identity. A very interesting thing happened when I fell in love with my husband. That tender, soft, romantic part of me that loved with wild abandon, with her heart wide open, not leaning or relying on her logical mind, came back online. I didn't think of it at the time. It's just how I was. Like the love for him, it just took over all of me. A similar thing happened a few years later when our daughter was born, my first child. Again, it was that love of a mother, that tender, nurturing, nourishing, holding of safety and softness. It just overtook all of me. And again, when our son was born 5 years later, very protective, nurturing, soft, warm energy, my feminine. And I didn't realize at the time, again, how those were two different aspects of me. The way I was in the office, and the way I was as a business partner with my husband, versus the way I was with him as his wife, and the way I was with my children as their mother. And there was a tenderness to me. And I felt like the world was constantly telling me to choose one or the other. Really, the preference was that I be in my masculine and just boss everyone around all the time. It seemed to be more convenient. I seemed to be a lot more in charge of my emotions, right? I seemed not to be too dramatic or too inconvenient. And so I struggled for a long time with these two aspects of myself, again, creating subdivisions within. Until something clicked for me when we moved to Paris, France. And by that time, our business was 15 years into its existence, and our children were in 2nd and in 8th grade. And I had been functioning out of my masculine quite a bit. I was juggling a lot, and it took me needing to have a plan, have a direction. I was organizing, I was running not just the company, which at its height employed 500 people. I was also running our family unit a similar way. There was just a lot that both my husband and I were juggling. Our lives were full. There was a lot happening, and it all seemed to be happening at a really intense pace and speed in life. And when we moved to Paris and we sold our business, everything came to a halt. Like the pace of life dramatically slowed. And I found myself in this spot of total and complete lostness in terms of, well, now what? We had been trying to get to the point of selling our business for quite a few years. And everything was about just pushing it across the finish line, because then everything would be okay. And it really wasn't. Because the story, as I like to tell it many times, is if you have a successful exit and you get to that moment in your life when you're patiently waiting for the money to hit the bank account, and finally it does, you're the same woman you were the night before, the extra few zeros in your bank account, than you are the day after. And for me, who I was confused and lost, because the identity I had taken on for the decade prior to that moment was the one organizing the business in our family, getting things done, functioning, over-functioning, juggling, the treadmill, the running, the hustling. I was disconnected from my feminine. I was disconnected from myself. I didn't know who I was without the job title, the business, my third baby. And at the same time, my husband entered rehab for alcohol addiction, and my kids were older and therefore a little bit more independent. There was, for the first time, space in my life. And that was the moment when there was space, when there was time, that the question came up from the underworld: who are you? Who am I if I'm not defined by the jobs I hold, the roles I play for other people? And I started to live that question as I was looking for the answer. And as I was doing that, I was walking the streets of Paris, getting lost in different sections of this beautiful city, and in the pounding the pavement until my feet hurt, until my legs hurt, until my body said, "Oh my God, will you please finally sit?" I discovered something about myself that I had long forgotten. The part of me that started to come online and alive in Paris was the one that looked at all the buildings and couldn't believe their beauty. She looked at the flowers in the florist's windows and gasped with awe. She watched the bakers carefully and gently put out the croissants and pain au chocolat in their window display with such pride. She watched the department stores and the small boutiques and how they displayed their treasures. There was just such beauty to life. And I became so aware of it, how much of it there was, and how much time there was for the first time in my life to open to it, to receive it, to experience the beauty of life. Paris awakened my feminine. Paris, for the first time, made me want to romanticize my life the way my husband and I romanced one another when we first met. Paris made me want to have a love affair with my life, who I was in it. Paris brought me back to the woman who loved flowers, clothes, beautiful places, beautiful coffee from a beautiful mug, a little baby smiling at her mother, a cute dog walking down the street, a beautiful park, a stunning building, a beautiful woman. All of it suddenly so apparent to me. Where had I been looking? How did I miss it? Oh, I was too busy. And so it was in Paris that the integration began. The woman, the feminine, the soft, the tender, the open heart, the nurturing, loving one, all of a sudden wanted her presence in who I was and who I was becoming, just as much as the part of me who knew how to get things done, how to be direct, how to make things happen, how to do. What if I was both of those, all of them at once and everything in between? What if all the parts of me and that I had rejected, that others told me were bad, not good enough, or needed fixing, what if they too were invited to come up and be loved and become a part of who I was? A whole integrated woman fully standing in her power. And so I really started to explore that. And the journey began with healing. The journey began with healing the wounds from my childhood that invited and drove me to reject parts of myself to begin with. Healing began by looking at things that I believed about who I was, just because that's what I was told by other people. I rejected everything that didn't feel like truth. I questioned all of it until a very clear picture started to form. I am my deepest wounds, pains, and traumas. My grandest moments, my deepest loves, my most beautiful experiences. I am those too. As a woman, I get to hold both the deepest heartache and the most beautiful love and everything in between. There is nothing about me that's broken or needs fixing. I am that baby who came into this world pure, sacred, and whole. I just forgot that because the world for the past 50 years has been telling me where I fall short, what I need to fix, how I'm too much this and not enough of that, and I believed them. And so becoming a whole woman was saying no to everything I had taken on for the last 5 decades as my identity. It began with the unbecoming, stripping off the layers that blocked me from seeing my own divinity, my own beauty, the wholeness and perfection of the creation that I am. And from that space of nothing, pure potential, I could begin to rebirth, recreate, to become. And I started that by inviting all the younger parts of myself who felt lost and rejected, and asking them to come back, loving everything about myself, which I was told was bad, ugly, and not good enough, accepting it as my own uniqueness, as my own authenticity, as parts of the whole that is me. And so I walked these streets of Paris, falling in love with myself, falling in love with life, allowing the beauty of the city to teach me that it is only a mirror. And I began to see that the mirror of Paris in its perfection and its abundance and its glory and its lights and its beauty was only reflecting that I already was within. This beautiful love story in the city of light, a journey of integration and wholeness, as I allowed myself to live by what feels good. What do I desire? What do I dream about? What do I want? And I gave myself full permission to live my life out of that. Those are my rules, not the expectations of others, not the way I must be, the good girl, the good student, the great life, the great wife, the amazing mother. I stopped looking for validation outside of myself, and the only thing I clung to was truth of who I was. Welcoming back the abandoned parts of myself to integrate into who I am today, a woman fully in her masculine, a woman fully in her feminine, one who dances between the two. Strong back, soft heart. I am a warrior and survivor. I am resilient and strong. I am powerful. But I am soft and tender and loving as I dance between the two aspects of myself, fully comfortable in both. I walk in my power, in my grace. And so that, to me, is the invitation to women these days. Femininity, feminism, is not the rejection of the masculine. It's not living out of the masculine to prove to the men in the world that we can have it all. Yes, we can. But there's more. It's not just that we can make money, grow big companies, be strong and powerful, have amazing careers. It's true. But not at the cost of our tender, soft, and nurturing hearts, which are so needed in this world right now. It's not force that we need. It's tenderness and love. And not at the cost of the masculine either. It's nice to want to flow and receive and be open and manifest by attracting. I believe in all of it. But not without the masculine counterpart within your own inner masculine, your container that holds the structure, your powerful stance, the container into which the feminine flows as it fills her. You are both. The masculine and the feminine energy, the sacred union of the two. And that is a whole woman. And that is the invitation of feminism. A woman fully in her power. That is our superpower. Not that we can have it all and we can go get it and we don't need anyone to give it to us. It's that, yes, we can. But there are also beautiful, tender parts to us that want to be held, that desire surrender, that know how to receive, how to open, ask for help, how to beautifully be interdependent. We are wired for connection, and I am here to model living out of both. My masculine and my feminine, fully integrated, whole, repressing nothing about who I am, loving every aspect. What if there was nothing wrong with you? What if there was nothing to fix? What if everything that hurt and felt broken was simply asking for your love and acceptance? What if it's not about being more disciplined and harder about what you're trying to accomplish? What if the answer is go slower and softer? I feel that as women, for too long we have been told to toughen up, and we have put on hard layers around our hearts. And I want to dare to live my life with an open heart, show up vulnerably, love with no boundaries, with no limits, to be willing to risk heartbreak, because I want to experience the depth of love that is available and accessible here during this lifetime. And I know I can hold myself through a heartbreak and pain. A whole woman is hard to manipulate or control. She's got her own back, while her heart loves fiercely. Could we be women like that together? I wonder. And that is what I wanted to say to you today. Thank you for listening. I love you, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you resonate with this message, or if you have a topic you'd like me to discuss in a future episode, I would love to hear about it. Send me a message on Instagram @MartaHabs. If you'd like to move more deeply in a community of like-minded, soul-led women, please join me in mine. It's called Come Closer. And if someone in your life would benefit from today's episode, I would love it if you send it along to them. Just click share in your podcast app and text it to a friend. Finally, I would be so grateful if you'd rate and review the Marta Habs podcast in your favorite podcast app. Your support will help this show find the women who need it. Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Until next time, I'm sending you all my love. Take care.